and gentlemen, welcome back to Obsessive Compulsive Gaming. I am the Obsessive Compulsive Gamer, and this is a Resident Evil update video. So dear viewers, if you don't mind, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. So, as some of the more avid fans of this channel might know, I am a massive fan of Resident Evil, be it the video games, the movies, the books, the action figures, the fan fiction pornography, you name it, I'm a fan of it. I played the original Resident Evil when I had absolutely no pubic hair to speak of, and now I have more grey pubic hairs than you could possibly count in a lifetime. So you can just imagine my excitement when recently it was announced that Zach Cregger, the filmmaker behind the absolutely fabulous horror movie Barbarian, seriously, if you've not seen that movie, rectify that right now. Anyway, that talented bastard apparently is going to be writing and directing a new Resident Evil reboot. Do we need a reboot? Probably not. Am I still excited we're going to get one? Abso-bloody-lutely. As you may or may not know, the last motion picture we got with the Resident Evil name was Welcome to Raccoon City, which tried to adapt the first two Resident Evil video games into one, albeit far too short movie, and while it wasn't exactly perfect, I had an absolute blast with it. So all I can hope is that Mr. Zach Cregger is maybe going to take a more streamlined approach to his movie, maybe just adapt the first game, or just the second game. Give me a solid 2-hour Resident Evil movie, and you'll probably convert all of those people who didn't like the Paul W.S. Anderson movies or the recent Welcome to Raccoon City. Very exciting. In other Resident Evil news, apparently, Resident Evil 6, which, for those of you who have been on the channel long enough will know is actually my favorite Resident Evil game. And nope, I don't say that with even a single hint of jest. It is still my favorite Resident Evil game of all time. I won't bore you with all of my reasons, but let's just narrow it down to say it gives me absolutely everything I could possibly want from a Resident Evil game. Ridiculous action sequences, zombies, a crazy bad guy, a nemesis-like stalker enemy. It's got my favorite version of Ada Wong. It's got some of my favorite scenes in the whole series. I could talk about that game for days. But anyway, apparently Resident Evil 6 is going to be released on current-gen consoles, those being the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X. Not only that, but apparently there's whisperings that the original Resident Evil remake and Resident Evil 0 and possibly Resident Evil 5 are also going to be joining Resident Evil 6 on current-gen hardware. Now, I think it's no coincidence that Capcom have a showcase next week, and if I had to make a prediction, I'm going to make it right here and now. I believe that during this showcase, not only will we see our first glimpse of Resident Evil 9, we will also see our first glimpse at the remake that Capcom's working on, be it Code Veronica, be it the original Resident Evil, or be it Resident Evil 0. Now, of course, I would like it if they were remaking Code Veronica, but that's just because I can't stand Resident Evil 0, and I don't think we need another remake of the first Resident Evil. I'm going to be excited no matter what they announce. Anyway, I think during that showcase, they're going to shadow drop Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, and Resident Evil 1 Remake and Resident Evil 0 on the current consoles. Here's hoping I'm right, and I'm usually right. Just like I say that it was Bertrum that actually pinched me on the bum earlier on when we were in the supermarket. I was right about that, wasn't I, Bertrum? Don't answer that, Bertrum. So yes, I'm very excited at the prospect of getting to play Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 5, etc., etc. on current gen hardware. But again, I am a Resident Evil fanatic, so it's not going to be for everyone, particularly if Capcom are going to charge us for the PlayStation 5 versions. Now, if you recall, when they released the PlayStation 5 versions of Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, and Resident Evil 7, it was a completely free upgrade to those of us who own the games on the PlayStation 4. So here's hoping they'll do something very similar again. I don't see why they wouldn't, but let's keep our fingers crossed just in case. And like I have already touched upon, the last bit of news I was maybe wanting to talk about was that Resident Evil 9 announcement that's still to properly come. What's going to happen in Resident Evil 9? Well, like a lot of the rumors have probably said, I believe it will probably star Leon S. Kennedy and Jill Valentine, who hasn't been in a mainline Resident Evil game since, Resident Evil Revelations? I believe. I think it was. Yes, Resident Evil Revelations, I think, was the last game that Jill was in. Last mainline entry, of course, being Resident Evil 5, which was all the way back in 2009. I think. It was either 2009 or 2007. I'm going to say 2009. And it will probably be the concluding part of the quote-unquote Ethan Winters trilogy, you know, dealing with Rose and the Mega Mycete and all of that black goo hoopla, Evelyn, fricking werewolves and vampires and 9-foot sexy women. And if you would like to see more of my predictions that I have for this particular series of video games, there's a video on the channel where I lay out all of my predictions, being that the remakes are actually in their own continuity, leading up to Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil Village, the upcoming Resident Evil 9. But you can go and find that video of mine, or maybe I'll be not so lazy and put a link to it down in the comments down below. You can go check that out for yourself. And finally, like I've already mentioned, let's touch upon the Resident Evil remake that they're probably doing at the moment. If they're not only working on one game, they might be working on 2 remakes. Now, like I said, I'd prefer to have a Code Veronica remake, which in my prediction video I said would maybe be a kind of, sort of, not really remake of Resident Evil 5 as well, to link it into the remake continuity, like I said, which would be Resident Evil 1 remake, the Resident Evil 2 remake, the Resident Evil 3 remake, the Resident Evil 4 remake. You would get the Code Veronica Resident Evil 5 remake, which would be the 5th one. There would maybe be a remake that would take place instead of Resident Evil 6, and then the continuity would go on to Resident Evil Biohazard, Resident Evil Village, and the upcoming Resident Evil 9. But like I said, just a theory. And I would prefer it if we were going to get a Code Veronica remake, but from what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, what I'm seeing online, it looks like it's going to be either a remake of the first Resident Evil again, which, okay, I'm not opposed to that. That's fine if you want to do that, okay. Or it's going to be a remake of Resident Evil 0. Which, to be fair, I don't like the original Resident Evil 0, so maybe a remake is exactly what we need to make me love that game. I guess we'll find out. So, like I said, Capcom got a showcase next week. Keep your eyes peeled on that. Maybe I'll react to the bloody thing for all of you lucky bastards out there. And yes, this has been a little update on the Resident Evil franchise. So if you'd like me to do more videos like this, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to take care of that. But in the meantime, remember the single most important thing I always tell you, dear viewer, and that is to always stay obsessed with gaming. Say goodbye, Bertram. Goodbye, Bertram. Are you still here? Oh, you must have really enjoyed this video then. In that case, you had better subscribe to the channel and check out our other content. Otherwise,
You're a booby pants. And no one wants to be a booby pants.